Hi, my name is Maurice Jenkins, and I'm the founder of The Intuitive Leader. I'm also the creator of the Intuitive Leader podcast, community, and intuitive leadership programs such as Decoding Intuition, Psychological Safety and Trust, and Reading the Room. This module will focus on psychological safety and trust. Usually, when leaders or companies hire a program or a workshop or a public reading session about psychological safety and trust, their intent is to create high performance, high performing leaders, high performing teams. Another way of saying that is highly effective teams or well functioning teams. For that, you need well functioning leadership and well functioning humans. To create highly effective teams, you need to strike a balance between push factors and support factors. Where push factors would be accountability loops, feedback loops, goal oriented leadership, conflict resolution, KPIs, financial accountability, and of course, clarities on roles, rules of engagement. Basically, the management aspect of running a team, the more harder aspect of the corporate world. And when it comes down to support and care, usually these words orbit around what would you need to do your work better in terms of what more information do you need or what more skills do you need. Whereas the actual fundamentals about care and support are much closer to home, are much more personal. These are psychological safety and trust in combination with authenticity in how people treat each other. I wanted to share a story with you when I was still employed as a salesperson in the corporate world. And this tech company got a new CEO. He was a very much American style cowboy kind of CEO and really drilled in the IT business. That means a tough cookie. His policy, his approach was basically management by fear. I'm not really sure how deliberate that was, but he scared people away, and I've seen him make people cry. He used to say that his door was always open, and quite literally, he had his own room with a door, but that door was always closed. So even though he said his door was always open, everybody could see that his door was always closed. And when people went into that room or were called into that room or were asked to come in, they didn't leave with a smile. They left crying. And I have personally seen grown up people, grown up men, crying after having a talk with him. As a result, people got afraid. And as a result, they didn't dare to take risks. Most of the people that got afraid for him actually left the company. And that includes me. At the time when I left the company, I was ranked number 2 in the global sales leadership board. So the people that leave are either the ones that are most afraid, I was definitely one of them, but also the people that have options. The best ones can leave. The ones that cannot leave feel stuck. Now, how motivating is your crew if they feel they're stuck? They're afraid for you, but they're stuck. So, what I'm talking about really is to create a genuine culture of trust. And in order to do that, we need to understand there are two games we are playing. We are playing the outer game towards others, and there is an inner game in ourselves. And the trick is that the more psychologically safe as leaders or within self leadership, the more psychologically safe we are within ourselves when we are showing vulnerability and when we are being authentic towards others, the more naturally our relationships will become and the more trustworthy we will appear towards others. We will create instantly more psychological safety for the people around us and definitely relationships more built on mutual trust. And I wanted to share another story from my life. In this case, when I was an interim leader, I was called in as a consultant to lead a team and, quite frankly, in a highly toxic environment. Very soon, I started to understand that I could only do wrong, meaning that the upper leadership, the upper management, had certain faults in terms of how they communicated and how they acted. They basically created a deeply toxic working atmosphere, and it had it completely eroded every single bit of trust the rest of the company had in CEO and management team. At the same time, I was responsible for a team that had to perform. And they weren't always doing that. But if they were or not, it didn't really matter. They were always expressing their disgust, really, with leadership. And they had a lot of questions, and some rightfully so. But the whole atmosphere in that team became highly, highly, highly toxic. That's also one of the reasons why I was there. I was supposed to work with that. Very, 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 very fast, I realized that I was losing trust with them too. They saw me more and more as a sort of extension of upper management. And whatever I said, it was viewed through glasses of distrust because they saw me as part of leadership. And I started to feel actually quite psychologically unsafe in my own team. I felt that I had these people against me, with the exception of one or two. And whatever question I asked, or whatever assignment there was, or whatever discussion we had, it always came down to basically that everything was bad and I was a part of the problem. At some point, at the end of one of those Monday morning meetings, I just said, I didn't even think of it. The meeting was basically over, ended. And I it just came out of my mouth that I understood that they felt psychologically unsafe, that they distrusted leadership, and that I actually, quite frankly, felt psychologically unsafe in this team, in my own team. I didn't say it to offend anyone. I didn't say it in effect either. I was quite calm. I didn't even I hardly thought of it. It just slipped my mouth, if you like. The result was quite astonishing. We sat there for another half an hour, despite the meeting being over, basically, and the whole atmosphere in that room flipped instantly. Instead of sort of attacking me or becoming, communicative, aggressive in any way, they changed completely, and they opened their hearts, and they started to express their sympathy for me, and also their understanding of my position being in between sort of two fires, if you like. So what happened there is that when I showed my vulnerability, and that was genuine, there was no thought or agenda behind it. I just said what I felt right there in the moment, and I showed myself vulnerable, and it was honest. My relationships with the members of that team changed instantly, and even after that, long after that, the way they expressed themselves, the way they invited me, the way they viewed me, and the way they took care when they were expressing themselves, about stuff that wasn't going well in the company, showed me very clearly that I wasn't any longer seen as part of the problem. I had their respect, I had their trust, and that basically changed the moment I was brutally sincere. So these stories, they tell us that psychological safety, trust, authenticity go hand in hand to create a culture of trust. And in this module, we'll focus on both the outer tools as well as the inner keys to create that culture of trust. So the foundations for this model basically have three main pillars. One is the evidence-based research that I'm using. Two, my own research with dozens and dozens and dozens of deep interviews with CEOs and other leaders. And three, proven methods that I know work. This module has 4 chapters. First, psychological safety and trust, the theoretical framework, if you like. Then the 4 phases for high performance. 3 characteristics of highly effective teams. And lastly, takeaways, and inner keys to create safety and trust.